For all the books and works we have read, I have found one common theme: freedom. So, what is freedom? Freedom is a condition in which people have the opportunity to speak, act, and pursue happiness without unnecessary external restrictions. Freedom is important because it leads to enhanced expressions of creativity, original thought, increased productivity, and overall high quality of life. Being restricted to express free thoughts, even when one is provided with all living necessities, would follow a miserable life. So the driving question is a sense of freedom essential to one's well-being and happiness? It's like the idea of caged birds. Caged birds may accept each other, but flight is what they long for. What this means is that they may accept their restricted situation, but freedom is what they value the most. It's what they want. Caged birds could be a metaphor for humans living in a restricted society. Sympathy by Dunbar is the best example of this. Dunbar uses sympathy to symbolize oppressed African American slaves. His poem is about wishing for freedom, but hating on confinement. The bird isn't really flying around or eating worms or building a nest in a tree somewhere, which is what birds are supposed to do. But Dunbar uses the caged bird analogy to describe his own lack of freedom. In lines 8 through 9, he says, "I know why the caged bird beats his wing, till its blood is red on the cruel bars." The bird he's presenting to us is so unhappy it's beating its wings against the bars until they bleed. Why is it doing that? Because it wants to fly from the cage, but it can't. Here again, Dunbar identifies himself with the bird and with its struggle for freedom. He, like the bird, wants to get free. The bird would keep fighting for its freedom until it's beat down and bloody. It's not happy being cooped up in there and living in its miserable existence. I know this because the author constantly refers to the bars as cruel. Another novel that expresses the idea of freedom is The Color Purple. The Color Purple is about a girl named Celie who's been constantly abused for most of her life. In a way, she's a prisoner of circumstance and has no freedom to express herself. The author emphasizes throughout the novel that the ability to express your thoughts and feelings is crucial to developing a sense of self. Celie was unable to resist those who abused her, and was miserable as a result. But when she found her voice, she gained confidence and is happy. This is expressed when she says, "I don't say nothing, I think about Nettie dead. She fight, she run away. What good do it do? I don't fight, I stay where I am told, but I am alive." This quote is another good example on the concept of freedom. Nettie, like the caged bird in Sympathy, fights for her freedom. She refuses to be trapped in Mr. Blank's clutches and live a miserable life of being used as his sexual object. Celie, on the other hand, while alive, lives a miserable life because she is constantly stifled by Mr. Blank. All her thoughts, feelings, and self-expression are muted. She doesn't fight for her freedom like Nettie, she's just given up. She's not really living, she's just surviving. She stays where she's told because it's sort of like a learned helplessness where she can't find a way to escape being a prisoner in her own home. Sophia is another character in the book who's assertive and hot-headed and won't let anyone stifle her freedom. Throughout the novel, she literally fights anyone who try to suppress her freedom, either through physical or verbal confrontations. Mostly physical, as she punched a lot of people in the novel.
Daddy, I had to fight my uncles. I had to fight my brothers. Cause child ain't safe in family meals. I ain't never thought I had to fight in my own house. I love Harpo. God knows I do. But I kill him dead before I let him. And that's...
This passage shows Sophia's fight for her freedom and independence. Sophia, as a woman during that time, has to stand up against the super strict generals of her society. The men in her life had tried to make her an obedient woman that does as she's told, which is like putting her in a box and restricting her freedom. Her house is the one place where she can get away from those men. It's her safe place to be herself. So when her sense of freedom or independence is threatened, she fights. She takes Harpo trying to beat her and control her, as him trying to take away her ability of self-expression. And when she realizes that he's still trying to do that, she leaves, which shows that a sense of freedom is essential to happiness. Finally, A Long Way Gone deals a lot with the concept of freedom. The story is about a young boy called Ishmael as he travels to Sierra Leone and eventually becoming a child soldier. He had no choice in the matter as he was forced into it, and the only way to survive was to join them. His freedom of choice was automatically taken away at this point. Anyway, he's a prisoner in the army. He becomes dependent on and addicted to cocaine, or brown. It was used as a way to control and brainwash the child soldiers. The rebel army had constantly oppressed Ishmael and other boys, starting with giving them a gun. Guns are a very prominent symbol in the novel. He says, "He gave me the gun, I held it in my trembling hand. He then added the magazine, and I shook even more." This quote is when he was first handed a gun. Usually a gun represents power and defense, but in this moment Ishmael was very nervous and visibly shaking. It is obvious that he's not comfortable with the gun, and the soldier can tell. The soldier says, "This gun will soon belong to you, so you better learn not to be afraid of it." This is just the beginning of the oppression of the army. After being brainwashed by the army, Ishmael had no problems firing his gun. The gun had quickly become his crutch, or like sympathy, his cage. Ishmael feels that he cannot be safe without his gun. In war, weapons are a source of power. Bay learns to focus his sense of security and strength in his GCU rifle for most of his military career. Later in the memoir, when his weapon is taken from him, he panics and feels a sense of loss without the tool of violence which has come to define him. Like Seeley, Ishmael is not truly happy. He's just living through life to get by. So, in conclusion, although all these works deal with different situations, Sympathy, The Color Purple, and A Long Way Gone have similar themes of restricted freedom and personal choice. All three literary devices express external restrictions of freedom, such as war, racism, and sexism. It's clear that the inability to express creative output is detrimental to one's well-being and happiness.